Hi, my name's Dale Bondanza. I've been in the information technology industry for over 30 years in a variety of verticals, including pharmaceuticals, manufacturing, medical device, security, financials, education, and many others, thanks to an extensive consultative career. Today's review is going to be my perspective on the path and objective that IT leaders should follow to establish a PMO from either a greenfield or to mature an existing PMO. It should be obvious whether you're starting something new or trying to mature a group that already exists that the steps are similar. So let me give you a little bit about my background first. First of all, again, I said my name is Dale Bondanza. I have a Bachelor's of Science in Computer Science from the Rochester Institute of Technology, and I also have my MBA in Management Information Systems, including a published thesis from my MBA at St. Joseph's University in Philadelphia. I have been a developer, started out my career as a developer, got into project management in the late 90s and climbed the project management ladder, finally obtaining the office of the CIO. I got my PMP, that is my project management professional, around 2007, and it is currently good as a member in good standing through 2027. I also have my Six Sigma Green Belt from Villanova University. I am also a certified Scrum Master from the Agile Institute. I've owned my own consulting company, DABEL Enterprises LLC, since 2004 and actively consulted between 2004 and 10, implementing PMOs in IT shops or simply running major projects and programs. Let's start with a couple definitions, okay? So PMO. So a lot of different definitions of PMO, but we're going to have to standardize on at least one to baseline this presentation. So when I say PMO, I mean a project management office. The word project can be substituted for program or portfolio. Sometimes it's strategic, but we'll talk more about that in a few minutes. PMI, the Project Management Institute, which is the guiding body globally on Earth to guide project management initiatives and practices. They produced a book called the PMBOK, which, those of us in PM politely refer to as the Bible of project management. Let's talk about greenfielding. So if you're developing a PMO from a greenfield, it's literally from scratch. There's no existing project management organization or department in your company or in IT that's currently set up to do that. Maturing, obviously you already have a department, so you're just looking to grow something. Usually you're measuring the current vitality of a PMO organization on the Likert scale, 1 through 5, just like the SEI CMMM model. Capability management maturity model parallels the project management maturity model in that same 1 through 5. Let me also say that for almost 20 years now, I have been consistently recruited by organizations to come into their information technology organizations and either greenfield or mature a project management office. So the purpose of today's lecture is to talk more about my approach to the establishment or the maturation of a PMO. There's no one right answer or combination of frameworks, governance, methodology. It's very organizationally dependent, and like all things, it should continuously evolve. I offer you a parallel for this video that I have another YouTube lecture series by the name of People, Process, and Technology. In that order, don't get it wrong. So when I talk about People, Process, and Technology, PPT, when you're maturing a PMO, you have to be brutally honest about its current state. From my PPT lecture, if you listen to that, all the best frameworks, methodologies, and templates are only as helpful as the people who work for them and can contribute to your organization. So many companies and executives want to be quote unquote agile because it's the business buzzword and has been for several years. And while Agile and Scrum have their place, there is no one size fits all for organizations. Frameworks must be pliable and adjustable. Too many organizations try and make one approach fit everything. Square peg, round hole. The process of monitoring your PMO and how your projects and programs and portfolio is doing is, again, a continuous journey, not a destination. So I'm going to share my screen again real briefly because I want to go into our presentation now, but I also want to start with defining what a PMO is. So let me do that. And there's my shared screen. So let's talk about what is a PMO. So if we're defining a PMO, the first thing that we need to talk about is the fact that It is a centralized organization, typically, unit or department that establishes and implements standardized project management practices, processes, and methodologies within an organization. The primary role of your PMO should be to provide governance, oversight, and support to both project managers as well as project teams throughout the project lifecycle. The PMO typically acts as a center of excellence for project management, aiming to improve project outcomes, increase efficiency, and enhance overall project delivery capabilities within your organization. It provides guidance, tools, resources, and project managers, facilitates communication and collaboration, those are key, among project stakeholders, and ensures alignment with organizational strategies and objectives. The specific functions and responsibilities of a PMO may vary depending on the organization's size, industry, project complexity, but they generally include project portfolio management, resource allocation, project tracking and reporting, risk management, and quality assurance. I greatly apologize having to read that slide, but I again felt it was best to have a good baseline. So with that, I'm going to talk about greenfielding a PMO first, and then we'll talk about the process of maturation. I'm going to spend a little bit more time on the greenfielding, but I am still going to talk quickly. There's a lot to get into this session, and I'm trying to do it in under 30 to 40 minutes at the most, so it's a digestible thing, that a lecture that people can watch over a lunch break. So with that said, let's dive in. If you need to slow down the video, again, I apologize. I am originally from New York, although these days I live in South Florida. So I'm enjoying the 100-degree heat right now in our summertime. So with that said, let's talk about the purpose and objectives for establishing a PMO in the first place. Most people want to establish a PMO to improve project delivery. 80% of projects fail to meet the 3 requirements of the iron triangle, either cost, time, or scope. Maybe you want to standardize project management processes. Every piece of the organization approaches projects in a slightly different manner, and you want to organize that. Maybe you want to simply provide project management training to the folks in your organization so that you have common terms, common practices and processes, common policies, or some combination of all of these. You want to improve communications, collaboration, and resource optimization. Those 3 things clearly should be paramount. So once you've decided on the purpose and objectives of your PMO, then let's talk about the scope. So is this an IT project management office, or is this a non-IT business unit project management office? Or is this an enterprise project management office? Or is it even a strategic management office or an SMO? An SMO, again, just a slightly different nuance on the term. But when I say project management office, again, remember that I'm referring to either, a lot of people call them project portfolio or program. In essence, they all do similar functions at varying levels. But again, within the scope, you want to determine whether this is a functional PMO. That is it a decentralized project management focus that's looking at a particular business unit without centralized management? Is this a project-centered or a centralized project management focus on a project or a specific program? Typically, these are used in larger organizations, but it may also be for a PMO for a specific major initiative. Think launching the space shuttle has their own PMO. Launching the new version of Microsoft's Xbox has its own PMO. Building a new cruise ship, yep, that's got its own PMO. Separate and distinct from what the company may have for their day-to-day operations. Maybe it's a hybrid. Maybe it's a mix of a centralized and a decentralized PMO. Maybe you have project managers in the business unit with all the tools and methodologies and templates, and the metrics are all at the central level. The type really depends on a lot of factors, including the size of your organization, the availability of resources, strategic alignments between the business and technology, governance needs, the methodology that you're using or that you choose to use, and any key performance indicators that are required to be tracked by senior management. So, okay, so now you've got your scope. You've determined whether it's functional, whether it's project-centered, whether it's a hybrid. So let's talk about governance. So from a governance standpoint of PMOs, you're really either, you fall into a couple different categories. Really, it's either a supportive PMO, which just means that You exist as a PMO just to support the rest of the organization. There's no direct control of the PMO over these projects, but the PMO does provide templates, training, best practices, and maybe it assists the executive, again, be it an IT executive or other executive, with portfolio management or resource allocation. Maybe it's a controlling PMO, which means the opposite, which it does have direct control to govern or manage projects within your organization. It establishes those same standards, and it may even loan out project managers from the PMO. Typically, again, this is typically done in a functional organization, in a decentralized PMO. Lastly, you can also have a directive PMO, which is, again, everything is in full control of the PMO. The project managers report to the PMO. That often includes portfolio management, resource allocation, and strategic planning. But it should include all processes required for project prioritization, approval, monitoring, and closure. So now we have our governance framework established. Let's talk about some of the resources and tools. This is quick because when we talk about resources and tools, it primarily falls into software oftentimes. So what type of software, what type of methodologies are you using to execute projects within your project management organization? Templates. So you clearly have templates that guide and define all of the different artifacts or deliverables from your organization. You have to define whether your what your primary methodology is, or if you're going to be methodology agnostic. Are you going to use a traditional waterfall methodology? I don't really think many people use a traditional waterfall anymore, but I mention it just for historical accuracy. Some people will talk about agile. Most people will talk about some combination or hybrid form of those two. When they talk about a waterfall and agile, sometimes they say it's wagile or scrumfall. Maybe you're using other methodologies like your Six Sigma philosophies under the DABEL brand or under the Lean Sigma brand. But again, templates, training, and staff with an emphasis on the tools and understanding that the tools are just that. The tools are tools. They need people to use those tools to make them most effective. Let's talk about, okay, now we've talked about, we know what the purpose is, we know what our scope is, we know what our governing framework is going to be, we've assessed some tools and some software that we need. Let's talk about implementing it. We're going to build an implementation plan for a PMO, just like we build a project plan for any other project. Steps required to build a PMO include a timeline, milestone, budgets, organizational design, and reporting. The implementation plan should be developed in collaboration with all of the interested stakeholders and should be reviewed and approved by senior management. That is so key. I can't overemphasize how key senior management buy-in to the process of developing the PMO is, particularly if this is an IT PMO. It doesn't just require the buy-in of your CIO or your IT leader. It requires all of senior management to buy into the process. Let's talk about building and launching. So PMO governance framework has been established from step 3. You've implemented the required resources, the tools, you have trained or you've hired project management staff. You've trained stakeholders on what the PMO processes and procedures are. So now as you're building out the PMO by executing all those steps, there should be some type of organizational launch to communicate the PMO's overall purpose and objectives to the entire organization. I talked about securing executive support in the last slide, and again, can't overemphasize that. It's not just a verbal commitment from executive leadership, but it's an enterprise commitment to increase efficiency through project execution. It's also worth discussing at this launch meeting that there's an understanding that there will be resistance to change. And there's a need to integrate a fundamental concept of project management, which is OCM, or organizational change management, into your methodology. Again, as part of a standard rollout of your methodology, a key component of it will be OCM. So Now you've built and launched your PMO. What's the last step? Continuously monitor its performance and continuously improve it. This includes collecting and analyzing project data, identifying areas for improvement, and implementing changes to the PMO governance framework, processes, and procedures. It takes a long time to develop a PMO, and we're going to talk in a couple of minutes about the timeline related to maturation. But just a quick picture before we move into the maturity slide. When we talked about earlier, I gave the definitions of what it means to go from a greenfield, which is going from nothing, an empty plot of land over there on the left side of the screen, to a future development. That's what it means to greenfield. You're taking something that doesn't exist today, planning for the future, and then building it. As opposed to maturing something, maybe from a level 2 to a level 3, like the picture on the right, where you have a very interesting triangular shaped building, but we want to add a mall onto it. Well, that's certainly a significant increase in the structure overall, and is certainly taking it to the next level. So with that said, I'm going to move into the maturity slides. And like I said, I'm going to go through these fairly quickly. I want to be able to get this done in under 30 minutes, and then give you the chance to kind of go back and review it where you think is most effective for your organization. So similarly to implementing a PMO, when you initially are evaluating the level of PMO maturity, you want to evaluate the current state. You want to conduct a maturity assessment to determine the PMO's current maturity level and identify any gaps between the current state and where you would like the desired state to be. Assessing the PMO's processes, procedures, and governance framework should be done to identify areas for improvement. You want to utilize a maturity assessment tool like the OPM3, which is from the Project Management Institute. You want to assign, again, a value of 1 through 5 to the current state. And I always laugh because I always say fractions are allowable. I have been in plenty of organizations that have desired to move from a level 1, which, if you can see in the picture, is the initial state of an organization or of a PMO, all the way up through a level 5, which is an optimized organization or an optimized PMO. Typically, and again, we'll talk about I'll probably say this more than once, but when you're moving from level 1 to level 2 to 3 to 4 to 5, when you're maturing a project management organization, or truly any organization, but obviously we're talking about a PMO today, typically it takes anywhere from 2 to 5 years to move from one level to another. That is even with the rapid increase in technology today, because when you're implementing changes to a fundamental process, governance, framework, templates, etc., you have to execute projects against that changed framework, and then you have to measure the results and the KPIs from that project. So oftentimes, unless those projects are rapid successions, it's difficult to determine how quickly you can mature a PMO without having a decent amount of data. And again, typically that can take anywhere from 2 to 5 years, which is again why I reiterate the point about some organizations may find themselves somewhere between a repeatable and a defined organization. So maybe they assess their maturity at a 2.2 or a 2.4, or maybe they're closer to a defined process. Maybe they're at a 2.8 and they just need a couple more things to make sure that they have standard consistent processes defined. So once we've evaluated the current state of the organization, we want to build the future state. So let's identify what the PMO's desired maturity level is numerically, and we're going to define a roadmap to get there. The roadmap should include the specific goals, milestones, and timelines for achieving that desired maturity level. This roadmap must be SMART, and most of us are familiar with the term SMART, quote unquote, but just for over explanation standpoint, SMART obviously refers to specific, measurable, actionable, reasonable, and timely. You want to make sure that all of your goals for building or maturing your PMO are just that. They're SMART goals that help you mature either a framework or the governance or the templates or the software or the people to achieve the next level. Because again, when you're moving from initial to repeatable, you're obviously trying to go from what is a level 1, which is more of a chaotic environment where things are accomplished through Herculean efforts, but then you want to move up to a repeatable process. So that's where you have disciplined processes in place. Maybe, okay, I have processes in place, but now I want to move them to be more defined. So I want to develop standardized processes and make sure that they're used more consistently throughout the organization. Great. So now we're a defined PMO. Okay, we're a defined PMO, but now we want to move to a managed PMO, which is we have a predictable process. We know what's going to happen when our reliability rate has increased significantly. And so now we're in a place where we're a level 4 PMO. Or now we're at that predictable place. We know where we are. We're going to move to more of an optimizing PMO. So where I said earlier that you're always going to continuously monitor and continuously improve your PMO, if you're truly an optimized PMO, you're looking at every detail on a very frequent basis to make sure that you're continuously improving and continuously developing that organization. So we've defined our future state. We're going to plan the bridge to get there. So that means we're going to develop a project plan, because even a project of maturing a project management office needs a Gantt chart. So let's develop that project plan to bridge the gap between the current and the future state of the PMO. Let's include what those specific initiatives are to improve the processes, procedures, and governance framework. Let's prioritize them. Let's assign the right people to them, the people who are best suited to grow and cover that gap, to increase the overall maturity level of the organization's strategic objective. We're going to implement, plan, and monitor that process, executing the initiatives that we identified in the plan. And just like, again, any other project, we're going to monitor the progress against the roadmap. Regular progress reports need to be given to both the PMO leaders as well as the functional organization that the PMO exists in, whether that's in IT or a non-IT business unit. Last step, obviously, always continuously improve. Just because you're continuously improving doesn't necessarily mean you're at a level 5 organization. Again, most organizations who are greenfielded start out at a level 1. They have nothing. They have no project managers. They have no business analysis. They have no framework. They have no processes. But once you have any process or any PMO in place, you want to regularly assess that PMO's processes, procedures, and framework to identify areas for improvement. The PMO should always seek feedback from its stakeholders to identify areas for improvement and implement changes accordingly. So hopefully that's been helpful. Like I said, try to keep that under 30 minutes. If there are any questions, please feel free to submit them to my YouTube channel. You can also go to my LinkedIn page. You may also go to either of my websites. My consulting company's website is dabenterprisesllc.com. Or you can even go to my personal website, which is dalebondanza.com, which can also direct you to my consulting organization. So with that, if you have any questions, please reach out to me. I really appreciate you watching today's YouTube lecture on PMO greenfielding and maturation, and I hope to talk with you again soon. Have a great day.